Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel and welcome to the TCEC Season 19 Premier Division. So we have covered already one game from this very nice competition. It was Leela C0 versus Ethereal, and it's time now for Stockfish game because we're expecting again the super final between Leela and Stockfish. Stockfish had some trouble so far in the competition because Stockfish played only 9 draws, hasn't won the game, hasn't also lost the game, but in order to make it to the finals you have to really win games. Leela has won 2 games so far. So as I said, it has surprised me a little bit because I've expected more of this improved Stockfish version. Stockfish is improving year per year, and that's why really I'm expecting again some brutal attacking games. And today I decided to show you gameplay by Stockfish against Allie+Stein. And Allie+Stein has proved itself also in the previous TCEC seasons. Allie+Stein played also in a super final, didn't win it, but it had participated in this very nice super final, so it's also a tough opponent. It was really an intense game. Again, a positional battle in the beginning, so we have seen also in the past that Stockfish has some troubles when it comes to a positional setup. Stockfish loves this open lines, open openings, and that's why it was really an interesting game between the two top engines. Let's check out now the game. It was a Dutch defense, and the Dutch defense can really be static sometimes in the beginning, so it's really a tense game. So knight to f3, here played by Stockfish. We have f5 by Allie+Stein, g3. We have the fianchetto attack. I most of the times play myself this g2 line, g3 bishop to g2 line, because there's, I think, no better way to develop the light square bishop. In some occasions you see that black could go into a stonewall setup with these d5 e6, then it's good to have this bishop on light squares and maybe crack the positional light squares and improving the diagonal for our bishop. So here knight to f6 played by Allie+Stein. We have bishop to g2, g6. We have now the Leningrad setup. I most of the times separate the Dutch only by two things. If black builds a stonewall, then I go again into the fianchetto. If black builds sort of Leningrad setup, then I like to go into a double fianchetto, and this Stockfish will also play here in the continuation because we want to have a competition on this diagonal, because most of the times black will develop the bishop on dark square here on g7. So d4, we have bishop to g7, castling, b3. Now we have this double fianchetto attack, d6 and bishop to b2. We have queen to e8. It seems like a strange move, but it's really the most natural way here to proceed for black. Black wants to build an improved King's Indian version because we have already played the move f5, and what we want to do is play the move e5, getting a pawn storm attack here on the king side. So the queen to e8 is a natural idea. There are of course troubles if the knight comes on d5 or on b5, but still these moves can be met with the knight on a6. You don't have to get your big queen back to d8 in order to defend your c7 pawn. So it's really a tense line. I had my troubles against this opening, so it was also important to me to see how Stockfish will proceed here. c4, we have knight to a6, and now rook to e1. The idea behind this move is simply to open the e-file, because the queen is on the e-file. It's a natural idea. If the position opens, if the pawns are off the board in the center, then the queen could be in trouble. So here b6, black builds also double fianchetto setup. We have knight to d2 and now bishop to b7. Here you could ask yourself the question, why doesn't develop the knight on c3? The knight on c3 blocks out your dark squares, so we want to have a competition. Of course, you see there is this tension between bishops already in the game, although not immediately, but as a long-term plan, the bishops could have a collision in the later stage of the game. So that's why you want to have your bishops liberated. That's why knight to d2. And here bishop to b7 was played, and Stockfish plays the move a3. The idea behind this move is of course to make progress further with b4, b5, a4, a5 and similar ideas, because it's obvious that black will try the attack on the king side with e5 pawn breakthroughs. So that's why we should attack the queen side. We cannot compete, of course, on both sides. We should defend our king side and try to attack on the queen side. But there is also an interesting line if you play e4 immediately. It seems like a dangerous idea. After knight to e4, we can play knight to g5. That's the tricky part here. And if you try to connect here with knight to c5, we could simply trade off more pieces and go into a simplified line. After maybe bishop to e4, c6 is the best way. But if your opponent plays bishop to e4, rook to e4, and then queen to e2, is very tricky already for black. We could have really a great attack on the e file, because e5 doesn't bring you so much. After e5 you see d takes e5, maybe d takes e5, again queen to e2, and black is continuing the game with an isolated pawn. That I'm showing you is also an interesting line. You can maybe check it out. Here Stockfish tried a more flexible way with the move a3. So we have e6, e5 so far, and it's not possible because there is this good protection. That's why I mentioned that it was very important to not to play the knight on c3. We have to keep this e5 protected. And now comes b4. Stockfish expands on the queen side. We have queen to e7, and now queen to b3. There is also a very interesting idea about this move. You see, there is a little bit of a tension here by the queen on the king. Again, if black moves the pawn too early, then we have maybe some c5 pawn breakthroughs with the direct check, and at least you can get a tempo, make something happen with this check. So that's why black has to be careful. And here Allie+Stein tried c5. We have b5 attacking the knight, knight to c7. What we want to do is now play a4, a5, tracking the position. And here a4 anyway, immediately played by Stockfish, and we have rook to b8. If you try, I've asked myself the question, why didn't black take the pawn? It could lead now into maybe aggressive line with e5, but it's really a bad choice. You get simply knight to d4, and after bishop to g2, we can simply take the bishop. And the problem is now that you cannot move this centralized pawns. You cannot move the pawn on d5 because you get bishop to a3. That's the main tactical threat. Your rook is on the same diagonal like the queen. And if you try e5 to make progress, it seems also like a dangerous move. You see, after trades of bishop, you have the weakness on c6. That's really a clear target of whites. You have to move the queen somewhere. After queen to e8, again bishop to a3, and it's a really bad position here for black. Again, we could try something like c5, opening diagonal, but I think the main positional problem is after rook to d1, attacking simply the weak d6 pawn. It's a backward pawn, so you see black would have troubles in order to defend this. So that's why you see Allie+Stein didn't take the pawn. Allie+Stein is not inviting some minor pieces into the game of white, so that's why the position has to be flexible further. You cannot make a clarification immediately. Here rook to b8, as I said, was played, and now queen to a3. So the idea is again tactical idea. If again something happens in the center, there could be this threat to take the queen. So that's why it's a positional pin on the queen so far by Stockfish. Pardon me, let's go back. Okay, sorry about that. So as said, queen to a3 and bishop to a8 was played. So now e3. Here Stockfish keeps the position compact. Again, if c takes d4 happens, then we could even recapture with the pawn. Could have maybe again two centralized pawns and again open the e file against the queen. So a6. Here Allie+Stein breaks the pawn structure of Stockfish. If you take, that's not a good choice. You see your pawns are split, so knight to a6 and knight to b4 will happen. So black will find a way to cement the knight into the game. So here after a6 we have rook to c1, and now rook to e8, bishop to c3, and here we have a takes b5, and now c takes b5, which was really an interesting idea. I've expected this move a takes b5, which connects the pawns again. Again, you wouldn't have pawn islands. C takes b5, really an interesting idea. And now comes knight to d5. It was a bad choice here by Allie+Stein. Maybe a better idea is to play simply bishop to d5. The idea behind this move is maybe to block the queen side with the move c4. That would be, I think, a great idea. Maybe something like rook to c8, knight to e8, and then c4. Could be really problematic for white. But then the pawn structure on the queen side will be fixed, and then really finally we could make maybe our e5 pawn breakthrough. There are of course counterattack possibilities here for white. We could try maybe something like bishop to f1, knight to c4. But as I said, bishop to d5 cements the bishop, cements the position in the center. So here, after the move knight to d5, Stockfish finds really a great tactic. D takes c5, because if you take knight takes c3 immediately, that's a problem, because you get first this intermediate attack on the queen. C takes d6. Black could give out maybe the knight back, but after a takes b5, queen to d8 has to be played, and now comes a stunner that Stockfish probably has calculated. Here, rook to c6. We can really sacrifice the rook, but if we get these two rooks pawns connected on the 6th rank, believe me, it's game over. So maybe you could try knight bishop to f8, but now knight to c4. You see, we simply are protecting our d6 pawn, and now it's time to double up here, maybe on the c file, or play something like rook to d1. But also knight to e5 is a great tactic here that you could prepare. So you see, this pawn on d6 will be really annoying one to handle. So that's why after the move knight to d5, you see d takes c5, and now black is forced to take the pawn. So here Allie+Stein decides to take with the b pawn. B takes c5, and we have now a new position. Okay, white has two pawn islands. You see, this is a pawn island and this is a pawn island, but there is this positional problem. These are two connected pass pawns, so Stockfish has already a great position. Of course, black can again counterattack in the center, but it seems to me that it's a little bit too late, because this pawn will be connected in the game. Bishop to b2. Stockfish wants to stay with the bishop on the board, and now the main idea is to play bishop to f1, protecting our b4 pawn, and simply push this pawn further. It's a simple idea. So e5, again, a bad choice maybe here by Allie+Stein. Knight to b4 seems like an interesting idea, because there is the clear target of d3. White would be forced to play something like bishop to f1, but now again this idea bishop to d5. I really like this idea. Maybe something like now e5 finally, but at least you have blocked your bishop on a very active and centralized square. e5 immediately. Now you see rook to d1, simply improving the position of the rook. We have e4. It's not a problem. Still we have this move knight to e1. You see how good this move was, rook to d1. After knight to e1, still we have the rook connection. That's the most important thing. And now knight to b4. It comes a little bit too late, because now bishop to f1, the d3 is very well protected, so we don't have any more troubles. But the most important thing is that our b5 pawn is protected, and now it's really time to push the pawn. So g5. Finally, Allie+Stein gets some kind of an attack. It seems to me that most of these moves were simply too passive for Stockfish. a5 here after f4, knight to c4, very important move, and now d5. Okay, you get an attack on the knight with a tempo, but now this knight comes on a very active square on the 6th rank here on b6, attacking the bishop. Here the whole game is really tense now. In the game, knight to g4 was played. Allie+Stein has to make something happen. The knight was a little bit pinned here by the bishop, and here Allie+Stein decides to go knight to g4. We have bishop to g7, queen to g7, and now rook takes c5. So this was a great tactic so far by Stockfish. You see, we grab the pawn. There is, of course, this tension on the king side, but it's defendable. Stockfish will show how to defend now this position. Queen to h6 was played, h3, of course, and now Allie+Stein plays really a great attack. Knight to f2, but as I said, it's defendable if you react correctly. The problem is that you cannot take the knight on f2. That's the main tactical problem here for white. If black takes here on e3, then it's a winning game here for white, because white can simply recapture with the queen. You see how important this queen is on the 3rd rank. But black doesn't have to take the pawn on e3. Black can take the pawn on g3. That's the most important thing. And if you try king to g3, then we play simply rook to f8. That's the main problem, and it's a draw. It's a perpetual. But white would be forced to play something like rook to g1. But again, it's a problematic position after rook to f8. You see, we can play something like maybe queen to b4, but then you get rook takes f1. That's the tactical threat that Allie+Stein has prepared here after king to f1, queen to h3, and it's a checkmate. That's the most important thing to realize. Then that's why after the move here, let's go back. After the move knight takes f2, here Stockfish reacts correctly and plays rook takes d5. So we have really now a tactical battle. After knight takes d5, we have knight takes d5, and maybe here for Allie+Stein, the best choice would have been to simply take. Bishop takes d5 after rook to d5. Maybe now f takes g3. Okay, there is this tension. Queen to a2 can be played, but now after king to a8, maybe queen to a1. I'm not sure about this position. Again, white has two connected pass pawns, but it seems to me that black could make something happen here. In the game, after the move f takes g3, here queen to b3 was played, so Allie+Stein didn't take the bishop, the knight on d5. Here rook to f8 was played, and now knight to b6 again. It comes with a check, and here king to g7, queen to b2, and now queen to f6. The problem is now in this line, after queen to f6 and the rook takes f6, that the position is more simplified now. That's the main problem. We don't have any more the queens of the board, so it's defendable now. And the problem is the move rook takes f6 comes with the fork idea. Knight takes d7, knight to d7. You see again, Stockfish has played a great tactic. So you lose one of these rooks. We have rook to d8, knight takes f6, king to f6, and now knight to c2. Basically, the game is over here. We can cement our knight on this very active e4. We have this two connected pass pawn. As I said, it's a completely winning endgame here now for white. So rook to d2, not a problem. We don't have to react here with the knight. We can simply continue to push our pawns. We have h5, not a problem. Rook to c8, bishop to d5, and now knight to b4, attacking the bishop. Simply bishop to c4. It was a desperate try. We have rook to c6, first a check, and now bishop to c4. It's really game over here. After bishop to f1, g4, h takes g, h4, again not a problem. We can simply go behind with our rook to h6, and in this position Allie+Stein resigned. So again, a great tactical battle, but you saw that this middle game was really tense. You have to really find the best moves. Great opening preparation and middle game tactics here by Stockfish, and great performance. And now Stockfish is on the second place with the win. You see, if you win one game in this tournament, you move up. You can really make it to the finals. Allie+Stein is now in troubles. I don't think that Allie+Stein can make it to the super final. So again, I think it will be the super final between Stockfish and Lila C0, and I can't wait to see that again, because Stockfish has improved, Lila C0 has improved, so again we'll have really the most brilliant attacking games. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. I enjoyed it a lot. It was quite a game. If you want to see more brutal games like this, check out my Analyze Games by Computers. Here's the link. And if you want to see the best chess games by humans, you can also check out my best chess games of all time series. And if you like this content, you can also subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best of